Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, if you do enjoy the video that you came here to watch, do me a favor, go ahead and hit that little red subscribe button at the bottom of the screen. It really does help my audience grow. It really does help this channel grow. It means more than you realize. So go ahead, hit that little red button. Also, remember, full episodes of the Aaron Torres podcast, wherever you download your podcast, Apple, Spotify, etc. Now, here is the video that you came here for.
I do want to continue the conversation on, frankly, a topic that it has really taken over the world of college football here over the last couple days, and that is the present and future of Auburn football. And we've certainly talked about it a lot here on the Aaron Torres podcast, and of course, also on the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. On Monday, we get the news that I think everybody, including Brian Harsin, has been expecting for quite a while. It is that Brian Harsin was let go as the Auburn head football coach. That was on Halloween Day on Monday, shortly after the announcement of John Cohen as the AD at Auburn. Tuesday, we heard from Brian Harsin himself, who had some very interesting things to say about the Auburn job, what's good, what's bad, in a statement that we talked about on the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. But now it's really about what's next, and more importantly, who's next. Auburn is a job that I think is really good. One of the top 15 in the country, one of the few that you can legitimately compete for national championships at. So the job is open, and the speculation, the fun part gets to begin over who is a legitimate candidate and who isn't. Some guys have already been asked about it. Hugh Freeze, by the way, is on the Aaron Torres Pod on Thursday, so make sure to check that out. He is obviously a candidate. But on Wednesday, one of the people that I think we all think is a candidate, Lane Kiffin, was asked about the Auburn job and had some very interesting things to say about the Auburn job, and not only his candidacy, but also the candidacy of someone else who he actually thinks might be better for the job than him. So let's get into what Lane Kiffin said. Again, asked about the Auburn job on Wednesday, and this is what he said about his candidacy. He said, "We don't really comment on those things. They happen every year a lot of times. All they are is a product of players performing well and assistant coaches obviously performing well. We're extremely happy here, got something really special going, have great support here from the administration and the chancellor, just trying to get better to play the best program in the last 10 years, Alabama, in college football." Ole Miss, of course, plays Alabama next Saturday. They're on a bye right now. That part isn't really that interesting, but we're going to discuss it in a minute. But what is more important is what happened next. Lane Kiffin nominated somebody else for the Auburn job on Wednesday during his press conference, and here is what he said about another guy that has been discussed and linked to the job quite a bit, a guy we call Coach Prime, Deion Sanders. Here is what Lane Kiffin said about Deion Sanders. "I think he'd do great. I think that's a great name, and they should hire him. He's a great recruiter, great name. This is a different world we're in now because recruiting has always been important. But now we have the portal. You can change a roster faster than you ever could before, and you could lose a roster faster than you ever could before." He kept going. The ability to hire Deion and have that name right away, and the portal people who want to be playing for him right away. And finally, he wrapped, and I think this is important. He said, "You can flip a roster where before realistically it would take 2 or 3 years to truly turn a roster around. You can do it immediately. You see teams get depleted, just look completely different the next year. Like our team. Picture our team without the portal, take those guys out there and look at what it looks like." And so there's a lot to peel back for what Lane Kiffin has to say, but credit Lane Kiffin. This man is not afraid to say exactly what's on his mind pretty much 365 days a year, and it is just so fascinating. So what I want to break down is two different things. What Lane Kiffin said about his candidacy and what he said about Deion Sanders. First of all, in terms of Lane Kiffin's own candidacy, listen, I understand this time of year, everybody kind of keeps things close to the vest. Deny, deny, deny. I love my place. I love my school. I love this. I love that. At the same time, I'll tell you this. While I understand the concept of Lane Kiffin being a candidate at Auburn, I don't know that I've ever really bought it. And I think that his comments kind of reflect that. Listen, Lane Kiffin would be a great candidate at Auburn, and there are logical reasons why he would leave Ole Miss for Auburn. It is a better job, no disrespect, Ole Miss. The NIL is better. They've won championships in recent years. It really is one of the few places in college football that when it's operating at the highest level, it can win national championships. And so Lane Kiffin has talked about frustration with NIL. He's talked about frustration with some things at Ole Miss. I didn't know this necessarily, but apparently, according to Mississippi state law, public employees can't sign more than 4-year contracts. And so, yeah, if Auburn comes out with a, Brian Kelly, Lincoln Riley, Mel Tucker, Jimbo Fisher type offer and offers him $100 million over 10 years or $90 million over 10 years, then yeah, I think he'd have to really consider it. But at the same time, I've never really understood him. I've understood him as a candidate. I've never really been sold that he truly wants to leave. By the way, keep in mind this as well. Last year, Ole Miss won 10 games in the regular season. They may do the same this year. But they won 10 games. Lane Kiffin was linked to every single job on the planet. LSU, Florida, Miami. He didn't take any of them. I don't even know if there was serious interest on the other side. So as he said, these conversations always happen. I do think Auburn would make sense and would be interested. I just don't know. He's got things going really well. And to his credit, he used the portal to his advantage. And it makes sense to me that he would be happy at Ole Miss. He's winning there. They let him be him. He's making a ton of money, even if he doesn't have that huge 10-year contract. And I would think that it would make sense for him to stay there. I would also add this. If you're really angling for a job, you can angle for it without actually nominating somebody else for the job. So I don't know about all you guys and girls. I haven't had a ton of opportunities in my career to really pursue a job aggressively. But the one thing that I know that I don't do, when I really want a job, I don't start recommending other people for the same job. And so I'm not saying that Lane Kiffin wouldn't ultimately accept. I'm not saying that Auburn couldn't put a contract on his desk that he simply couldn't refuse. I'm just saying he does not sound like a guy that really has all that much interest in leaving. But Deion, now that's really interesting. And what's interesting is Lane Kiffin really made the argument that I have been making for Deion since early September. The first time I really started talking about Deion as the head coach at Auburn, I was ahead of everybody, by the way. Go back and look. It was right after the Penn State game when it was clear it wasn't going to work out for Brian Harsin. And so I believe that Deion would be a great fit. Now, I have no skin in the game. If it's Deion, if it's Lane Kiffin, if it's Matt Rule, if it's Hugh Freeze, doesn't matter to me. I'm going to watch Auburn anyway. But everything that Lane Kiffin said confirmed why I think that Deion would be a good head coach. And some things that he didn't even say. First of all, with Deion, I always think this is important to note. This guy's a heck of a football coach, and I want to make sure this point gets across to people who do not follow, the FCS on a day-to-day basis. Jackson State is 7-0 this week, 7-0. Jackson State just hosted College Game Day. Jackson State was 11-2 last year, 11-1 against FCS opponents. So in his last 19 games, against FCS opponents, take out one game against an FBS opponent that had more scholarships, more everything than Jackson State. The guy is 18-1, okay? This is not a famous person who is coaching college football. This is a really good college football coach who happens to be famous. He'd be great, I believe, at any level, at any school, with the right opportunity, with the right resources, but also not just because he's a good coach, but because of what Lane Kiffin just said. Recruiting. Deion Sanders has already proven himself to be an elite recruiter, and the portal is the great equalizer in college football. First off, it's important to remember, and I say this all the time, keep in mind, we all know Deion Sanders signed the #1 high school player in America, Travis Hunter. In doing so, in also getting a 4-star wide receiver named Kevin Coleman Jr., top 50 to 60 player out of Missouri, who is at Jackson State right now. He did something that Brian Harsin never proved an ability to do. He beat Nick Saban and Kirby Smart, not to mention Mike Norvell and everybody else, for a recruit they wanted. So don't tell me Deion can't recruit at this level, because we know that he can. But with the portal, with Deion, with that swag, with that confidence, can you imagine what he could do at Auburn? First off, just think about it like this. If he leaves Jackson State, he's probably bringing a few guys with him, including Travis Hunter and including his son, Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur Sanders right now at the FCS level, and I know it's the FCS, 71% completion percentage, 24 touchdowns, threw for 30 touchdowns last year. I don't claim to be an NFL scout, but people are saying this kid's an NFL quarterback. So he would come. I would think Travis Hunter would come with him. And I'll tell you, those two, that's probably the best offensive NFL draft prospect And that's probably the best defensive NFL draft prospect on Auburn's roster next year. So Deion's already proven an ability to beat elite coaches for elite players that they want. But two, it's what Lane Kiffin said. It's about that portal, baby. And beyond the guys that he could bring, can you imagine what Deion could do at Auburn in this modern era? As Lane Kiffin said, the portal, you can flip an entire roster. If you don't want to talk about Ole Miss, think about what Brian Kelly did. Remember, LSU had 30-something scholarship players. The last time they played last year, it was in a bowl game against Kansas State. He didn't really flip he just added to the roster 25-plus players in the portal. And now they're 6-2 and in the top 10 in the country because of those portal guys, because of Jaden Daniels, because of all the guys that Brian Kelly brought in. Lincoln Riley, it goes without saying, is USC in the top 15 right now? Are they sitting at 7-1 coming into this week? If it isn't for the transfer portal, I don't even think Lincoln Riley leaves USC if he couldn't go into the transfer portal and get difference makers the way that he did. Ole Miss is another one. Obviously, as Lane Kiffin said in his own words, they aren't 8-1 right now going into the bye week if it isn't for the transfer portal. And so again, I have no skin in the game. I really don't care. I just think that Deion Sanders would be a heck of a hire at Auburn. And I find it very interesting that Lane Kiffin is the one that said, listen, like I said, if Matt Rule gets the job, if Hugh Freeze gets the job, if Deion gets the job, if Lane Kiffin gets the job, I'm going to be watching Auburn anyway. But when one active head coach that has been linked to the job starts recommending somebody else, it's a sign to me that one, he probably doesn't want it. And then two, of equal importance, that Deion would be a heck of a candidate. Listen, if you enjoyed this video, do me a quick favor. Make sure to subscribe to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube channel. Also, new episodes of the Aaron Torres Podcast available wherever you download podcasts. Make sure to subscribe.